Good evening. Welcome to the Glazov Gang. And yes, the Glazov Gang is back thanks to you, our fans and our supporters. Thank you so much for saving the Glazov Gang. Once again, this is a fan-generated show now. If you like the Glazov Gang and like the shows and like the themes and support the themes that we discuss, please go to jamieglazov.com and support the show. And also, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. While you watch this show, you're going to see a red little box on your bottom left-hand screen or right-hand screen. Please press on it and subscribe, and it helps us a lot. Thank you very much. What an honor and a privilege it is to have back on the Glazov Gang Daniel Greenfield, the Shillman Journalism Fellow at the David Horowitz Freedom Center and the editor of the blog The Point at frontpagemag.com. And of course, he writes the blog The Point as well. Daniel, welcome to the Glazov Gang.
Thank you. The honor is mine, and it's good to see that the gang is back together again.
The gang is back together. It just was led astray for a minute, but it's back on the right path thanks to all of our viewers and our fans and, of course, great guests like yourself, Daniel, and members. Daniel Greenfield, powerful, profound blog of yours the other day on The Point. The creepy way Muslims lure American girls to join ISIS. Before I ask some questions, tell us what this phenomenon is about.
Well, there's a recent story. We hear these stories about not just Muslims, but Americans converting to Islam, going off to join ISIS. And we wonder what kind of mindset, what kind of people could do that sort of thing. And this was a story that was provided a window. It dealt with a girl named Alex, a young girl who's living with her parents. She teaches Sunday school. She's part of a rural Christian community, but she converted to Islam. She nearly joined ISIS. She was nearly seduced into going off to Syria to join ISIS, and it goes into depth into how they did it. You had the James Foley beheading got her interested in what these people were doing. They started manipulating her. They began love bombing her, which is a term that cults use for lavishing attention and affection on vulnerable people. They sent her presents. They told her all the good stuff, none of the bad stuff about Islam. And before too long, she was prepared to ride the train all the way.
And Daniel, and this represents a lot of cases, very important, powerful blog that you wrote on this because there's so much here. So let's go back for a minute. You write and you also just explained how there's so much overlap here with how sex grooming gangs in Islam operate in general. Talk a little bit about that, how they overlap here.
There's a lot of similarity there because part of it obviously is sex trafficking. They were trying to lure this girl to Syria, and it was unknown what use they would make of her. The man who was talking with her claimed to have multiple wives, for example. But beyond that, you see similarities in terms of tactics. They initially bombard their target with affection. They tell her how much they love her, how much she means to them. And this really stuns especially girls from troubled backgrounds, girls who are impressionable, who are vulnerable, who don't have this going on in their lives. And once they're drawn in, they're abused, they're humiliated, and they're told that they're no better than this and that they need to keep quiet and take it. This girl in particular never made it to the other stage, but plenty of the girls in the UK who were trafficked, who were raped, who were abused, who were prostituted, obviously went all the way down to the lowest part of this stage.
What is the psychology of the jihadists that are involved in this? Why is it so important for them to groom and capture these Western Kafir girls?
To understand Islam, we're dealing with an Arab world, and the Arab world is tribal. It means that the men carry the honor of the women, which means that they have to protect, but really protect is a euphemism, they have to control women. Men who fail to control women, whose face they're humiliated, they're shown as not really being men. This is part of why you have the hijab, you have the women being forced to remain at home, not being allowed to drive, forced to wear burqas. It's all part of this psychology. Now, when it comes to attacking Western men, Arab men do it in a tribal fashion, which means they do it by attacking their women.
Daniel, now you touched on it. Let's return there for a minute. The psychology of the young Western girl that is free. You would think that you would just sprint and run away from a totalitarian, tyrannical cult. And yet, I've been fascinated with this all my life, this attraction to despotism, this attraction to slavery. But in the beginning, it looks utopian for them. So you've discussed it. Inexperienced, naive, lonely. What's going on? What's the psychology of the potential victim?
It's important to remember that evil is seductive. Evil does lure people in, and it does that because it has a great deal of passion attached to it. The people who are involved in it are obsessed. They appear more real and more alive in some ways. Certainly they appeared so to this girl who was in a rural community where people weren't necessarily very passionate about things. And these people that she met on the internet were very passionate. They were very extreme. They absolutely believed in what they were doing or appeared to. And that's appealing. It's attractive. And sometimes people don't understand that it's actually what they're being attracted to is evil because they feel that people who are passionate, who are obsessed about something, must be right. And really, it's the liberal culture that promotes that idea that feelings matter more than objective morality.
Thank you, Daniel. Since I was a kid, my dad introduced Dostoevsky to me when I was young. And the Grand Inquisitor to Christ and the brothers Karamazov, he reprimands Christ for giving freedom to man because freedom is a burden that many humans cannot handle. And I think that there's something involved in this here because there's a giving up of freedom. And so, for instance, I've read quite a few accounts of Western young girls who went over to Islam. And I remember one of them was boasting that at her church there weren't enough rules. And now, after she joined Islam, now she knows exactly how many meters she's allowed to leave her house. And she was bragging about this. What is this attraction to slavery and to control?
Well, within Islam, you have tiers of slavery. All Muslims are slaves. They call themselves the slaves of Allah. Within Islam, jihadists are the most free of all because they can violate virtually all of Islam's rules in the name of Islam because the most fundamental rule of Islam is spreading Islam. So the jihadist becomes free by accepting his inevitable death. The jihadist says, you love life, we love death. This is the taunt they aim at us fairly frequently. What the jihadist means by that is that by giving up his life, he effectively gives up agency and ownership. He no longer is responsible for the things he does because he's just a vessel for perpetuating Islam. Now you see something similar on the left where you have this kind of desperation to create and enforce tyranny, to subjugate people, to eliminate choices, and to say that this is the way that it's going to be, and there are no other possible alternatives.
Daniel, myself, as somebody who has studied political pilgrims, fellow travelers, we know that those communists who went to build communism in Russia were devoured by the Stalinist machinery. We know many that went to build communism in China were devoured by the Cultural Revolution, devoured by Mao. We know many leftist Iranians that returned after the Shah was overthrown to build this paradise, and they were devoured and mutilated and maimed by the Ayatollah Khomeini. It's very interesting, just fascinating, but frightening how these utopian revolutions eat their children. And so what I'm getting to here is, we know many leftist feminists who go to Gaza to support Hamas, and the Palestinians end up being gang raped and enslaved by those that they're supporting against Israel. So there is a connection here. Tell us a bit about how these girls fall in love with Islam, convert to Islam, think they found utopia. They get over there. What happens to a lot of them?
They find out the reality is that they're considered subhuman, that they're considered disgusting, that they're considered property. Now, for some of them, that's obviously appealing. It's a twisted mindset. But there's a reason that some people are drawn to evil, that some people are just drawn to destructive behavior. And this is really another form of destructive behavior. For them, converting to Islam is much like joining a cult or like joining a communist terrorist group. They seek the state of mind in which they become less than human.
Dinesh D'Souza talks about how Obama and Hillary and all these revolutionaries that are part of the Zelenskyite school, they follow very much Satan's plan to, because Satan pretends he's operating in your interest, like the serpent did with Eve. He pretends he's doing something for you, but through that he destroys you. But on the other end, there is something very appealing here. For instance, when you talk about the lure of evil, that it's attractive, that somewhere Eve thought that it was good to eat the apple, but she destroyed herself. Can you talk a bit about that, how evil is so appealing, but it destroys those that take the bite?
Part of it is that the big appeal of evil is that it is destructive. Some people do seek self-destruction. For example, the entire cult of suicide bombing within Islam, the tactical gains of that are very limited. Once you have somebody who's a one-shot, who's literally a human bullet, that's not a very effective strategic tactic, but it is a very powerful propaganda tactic. It says that I am less than human, I am willing to die. And that's the cult of self-destruction. It's a literal cult of death. And that's really part of the appeal, because the kinds of people who feel that they are worthless at some level gain worth from this cult, and they kill themselves and they kill others. They really resent the idea that there are other people who feel that they have worth, who feel that they have achieved something, and they want to destroy it, whether it's skyscrapers, whether it's art, whether it's ancient civilizations, or whether it's human bodies.
Somewhere here there is a death wish, there is a self-destruction, there is a self-hate, but in the name of building utopia.
Well, evil is always ultimately destructive. Evil destroys other things, and then it eventually destroys itself. At the core of evil is self-destruction, but of course it masquerades as being constructive, as being building. We have to destroy in order to build. The left destroys everything, and then it's going to create communism on Earth. It's going to create paradise on Earth. It's going to create utopia. But first you have to kill millions and millions of people. Then you have to go on doing that for generations. And then eventually utopia will happen. But of course, that's not really the purpose. There's never going to be a utopia. The purpose of the destruction is destruction.
Daniel, so many things are being banned in our society and culture, and we can get into a whole lot of things being banned, taken down, etc. Why is ISIS even allowed to operate in this way, grooming Western Kafir girls on Twitter and on social media? Why aren't all these apps and whatever they are on social media shut down?
It's a very good question. We've been battling to get the stuff off social media. I mean, this has been going on for a while. Senator Lieberman, back when he was in office, had to really push hard on YouTube to get them to take down the al-Awlaki stuff and some of the al-Qaeda stuff. So this has been really going on for a while, and they're resistant to taking this down. When it comes to the Confederate flag, they can purge it in 5 minutes flat. But this stuff, they have a certain amount of empathy for it.
So Daniel, in terms of this problem of the grooming of American girls over social media by ISIS, what conclusion do you have at the moment? To what extent is it occurring, and why is it so dangerous and lethal?
We don't know to what extent it's occurring, but to any extent that it's occurring, it's bad. Certainly, any girls who end up in Iraq or Syria, American girls, it's a tragedy. And also, even more serious, you have American men being groomed to a much larger extent. And we've already seen terrorist attacks, terrorist plots being carried forward by American converts to Islam. So this remains a very serious issue. You have Americans engaging in suicide bombing for ISIS in Iraq and Syria. But you also have them carrying out or attempting to carry out terrorist plots right here in the United States. So this is something that we absolutely have to be aware of.
And we have to be aware of it, but let me ask you this. Why is it that I only learned of this through your blog? And thank you so much for the point and everything that you do. I think it's the best blog on earth at the moment, to be honest with you. I'm always reading it. But Daniel, where's Hillary Clinton? Where's Michelle Obama? Where are all the leftist feminists? Where are the women's studies departments throughout academia? Why this silence?
Well, it's a silence because they're complicit in it. Judith Butler said that Hamas and Hezbollah are progressive organizations. Maybe one day ISIS and al-Qaeda will be considered progressive organizations. They're not capable of rejecting the roots of this evil. They're not even capable of saying that the way that Islam treats women is wrong. So how can they be expected to condemn this?
Daniel, with the minute we have left, let's close with this. What's been primarily on your mind recently, and where are we headed as America and as the Western world? Because the tide is against us in terms of how things are going, correct?
Yes, we're seeing the rise of totalitarian movements, obviously, in the Middle East. but also seeing the rise of totalitarian movements right here in the United States. And a lot of this is happening on social media. Both ISIS and the ubiquitous social justice warrior has very effectively exploited social media, which allows small groups, small, heavily fanatically organized groups to project influence and power way beyond their actual level of support. And this is something that we have to push back against.
Ladies and gentlemen, make sure you read Daniel Greenfield at his blog, The Point, on frontpagemag.com. Once again, this is a fan-generated show. Please support us at jamieglazov.com. If you like our truth-telling and you like the themes we discuss, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Daniel Greenfield, an honor and a privilege again. I hope you'll come back on the Glazov Gang if invited.
Thank you, and I look forward to the next episode.
Fantastic. Thank you, Daniel. Always a pleasure, always an honor. We'll see you next week on the Glazov Gang. Good night.